Please. The word shattered in the darkness. Just one night. Amanda's hands froze on the wine glass she was washing. The voice behind her made her entire body go rigid. Kang Ji-hoon stood in the kitchen doorway at midnight, still in his dress shirt from dinner, his tie loosened, his dark eyes burning with something that made her breath catch. "Mr. Kang, She turned, her back pressed against the counter. "This isn't appropriate. I know you saw everything." He stepped closer and she could smell his cologne, cedar and danger. "In my wife's bedroom. You saw what she said to me." Heat flooded her cheeks. She had seen, had witnessed the powerful Mafia boss on his knees begging for intimacy only to be destroyed. "I should go." But her feet wouldn't move, couldn't move. Not when he was looking at her like that. "One night, Amanda." His voice was raw, desperate. "Just let me forget. Let me feel something real for once." This was wrong. He was her boss. She was undercover. She'd come to Seoul for revenge, not this, not him. But when his hand reached out, hovering near her face, her body betrayed every rational thought. Her pulse raced. Her skin burned where he wasn't even touching her yet. "We can't," she whispered even as her body swayed toward him. "I know." His thumb brushed her cheek and electricity shot through her. "Tell me to stop." She should. God, she should. But the way he looked at her, like she was the only real thing in his world, made her forget why she'd come here, made her forget everything except the ache building in her chest. "I can't," she breathed, but her face leaned forward to meet his. And when his lips crashed into hers, 3 months of tension exploding between them, Amanda realized she'd just made the most dangerous mistake of her life. She'd fallen for the man she was supposed to destroy. If you're already hooked and want to see how deep this forbidden love goes, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment telling me if you'd risk everything for love, and smash that like button because this story is about to get wild. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. 3 hours ago, Kang Ji-hoon, the man who made Seoul's underworld tremble, stood at his wife's bedroom door trembling. Not from fear, but from desperation. Seo-yeon didn't even turn around. Her voice was ice. "Get out, Ji-hoon. I'm begging you." His voice cracked. "One night. We need an heir. The families are questioning." "Good." She finally faced him, her smile cruel. "Let them question. Let your empire crumble. Because I will make sure you die heirless, Ji-hoon. I've spent 3 years ensuring you'll never have what you want." The truth hit him like a bullet. She'd been sabotaging him, deliberately, destroying his legacy one calculated month at a time. "Seo-yeon, please. You can't be this mean. We haven't been intimate in months, just tonight." "No. Not tonight. Not ever." From the hallway shadows, Amanda Hayes had seen everything unfold. She shouldn't be there, shouldn't be witnessing this. But her feet wouldn't move. Her breath caught somewhere between her lungs and her throat as she watched the most powerful man she'd ever known reduce himself to this. The great Mafia boss on his knees. Their eyes met, and in that moment everything changed, everything that would destroy them both. 3 months earlier, Amanda had stepped off the plane at Incheon International Airport with one suitcase, a fake resume, and a heart full of vengeance. Seoul stretched before her like a glittering promise, all neon lights and possibilities, but she wasn't here for the culture or the adventure. She was here to find the truth about her father's murder. Marcus Hayes, the most feared crime lord in Atlanta, had been found dead in a warehouse 6 months ago. The police called it a gang war casualty. Amanda knew better. The trail had led her across the Pacific, through whispered conversations and coded messages to one name that kept appearing in her father's encrypted files. Kang Ji-hoon, Korea's youngest and most ruthless mafia boss, the man who'd consolidated 5 rival families under his control before his 30th birthday. The man who, according to her intel, had connections to her father's final business deal. Getting close to him had required creativity. She couldn't exactly walk into his office and demand answers. So she'd done something he'd never expect. She'd made herself invisible. The Kang household had been looking for live-in help. Amanda had fabricated a background as a Nigerian immigrant seeking work, had dumbed down her resume, had learned to make her eyes downcast and her presence forgettable. The agency had hired her within a week. And just like that, she'd walked into the lion's den wearing an apron and carrying a mop. The penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of the most expensive building in Gangnam. Everything was white marble and sharp edges, beautiful and cold, like living inside a diamond. Amanda's room was tiny, tucked behind the kitchen, barely large enough for a bed and a dresser. But it had a lock on the door and a window that faced the city, and that was more than enough for someone who'd learned to survive on much less. She'd expected a monster. The files on Kang Ji-hoon read like a horror story. Extortion, money laundering, suspected involvement in at least a dozen murders. He controlled the ports, the politicians, the police. He was untouchable, unstoppable, and according to every report she'd read, absolutely ruthless. So when she'd first seen him that morning in the kitchen pouring his own coffee at 6 a.m., she'd been prepared for a demon. Instead, she'd found a tired man in an expensive suit with shadows under his eyes and shoulders that carried the weight of an empire. He'd glanced at her, nodded once, and said in perfect English, "You must be the new help. There's a list of dietary restrictions on the refrigerator. My wife is allergic to shellfish." His voice had been deep, measured, completely devoid of emotion. But his eyes... God, his eyes had been empty in a way that Amanda recognized. She'd seen that look in her own mirror during the months after her father's death. The look of someone going through the motions of living without remembering why. "Yes, Mr. Kang," she'd replied in Korean, keeping her voice soft and deferential. Something had flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. He'd opened his mouth as if to say something else, then closed it, nodded again, and left. The entire interaction had lasted less than 30 seconds, but Amanda's hands had been shaking as she'd listened to his footsteps fade down the hallway. Not from fear. From the unsettling realization that the man she'd been hunting felt nothing like the monster in her files. Then Seo-yeon had appeared. She'd glided into the kitchen like a vengeful ghost, all pale skin and sharp cheekbones, wearing a white silk dress that probably cost more than Amanda's entire year's salary. She'd looked Amanda up and down with eyes like frozen chips of obsidian, her lip curling just slightly. "So you're the new maid," she'd said in Korean, not bothering to check if Amanda understood. "Let me make the rules clear. You don't speak unless spoken to. You don't make eye contact with my husband. You don't touch anything that isn't related to your cleaning duties, and you certainly don't exist in any meaningful way in this household. Are we clear?" Amanda had bowed her head. "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Because the last girl who forgot her place had to be sent home. And trust me, you don't want to know what sent home means in this family." The threat had hung in the air like poison. Seo-yeon had smiled, cold and beautiful, then swept out of the kitchen, leaving behind the scent of expensive perfume and casual cruelty. And Amanda had thought, not for the first time, that maybe monsters came in more than one form. The first week had been about learning the layout, the schedules, the patterns. Ji-hoon left every morning at 6:30. Seo-yeon rarely emerged from her bedroom before noon. They had separate rooms on opposite ends of the penthouse. They took meals separately. On the rare occasions when they were in the same room, the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. They spoke to each other with the warm familiarity of business associates negotiating a hostile merger. Amanda had expected a lot of things, but not this. Not a marriage that was clearly a beautiful, expensive corpse that no one had bothered to bury. She'd used her invisibility well. While dusting the office, she'd photographed documents. While cleaning the bedroom, she'd cloned hard drives. While serving dinner, she'd memorized conversations. She was good at this. Her father had trained her well back when she'd been his little princess before she'd understood what his business really meant. He'd taught her to observe, to remember, to survive. Now those skills were all she had left of him. But 2 weeks in, something had shifted. It was close to midnight. Amanda couldn't sleep, her mind churning through the evidence she'd gathered. None of it pointed to Jihoon being involved in her father's death. If anything, the timeline didn't match up. She'd gone to the library, that massive room lined with books in Korean, English, Chinese, and Japanese. She'd pulled out a volume of Korean philosophy, settling into the leather chair by the window, trying to lose herself in someone else's thoughts. Can't sleep? She jerked around so fast the book had fallen from her hands. Jihoon stood in the doorway, still in his dress shirt and slacks from dinner. His tie loosened, his hair slightly disheveled. He looked different, more human, more dangerous in his humanity than he'd ever been in his power. "I'm sorry, Mr. Kang," she'd stammered, reaching for the book. "I didn't mean to disturb anything. I'll go back to my room." "You're reading Yongju's commentaries on Confucian ethics." He'd stepped into the room, his eyes on the book in her hands. In classical Korean. Her heart had hammered against her ribs. Stupid, so stupid to break character. I studied some Korean literature in university," she'd said carefully. "Before I came to Seoul." "What university?" The question wasn't accusatory, just curious. She'd met his eyes then, making a split-second decision. "Spelman College, in Atlanta. I had a scholarship, before my father died and everything fell apart." That last part, at least, was true. Jihoon had moved to the window, looking out over the city lights. "What did you study?" "International relations, criminology." She'd added with a self-deprecating smile. "Lot of good it did me. Here I am cleaning houses. Here you are reading advanced philosophy at midnight in a language most foreigners can't master." He'd turned to look at her, really look at her for the first time since she'd arrived. "Why do you hide who you are?" The question had cut through her defenses like a blade. She'd stood, clutching the book like a shield. "Same reason you wear that cold mask, Mr. Kang. Survival." The silence that followed had been electric. His eyes had narrowed, something shifting behind them. Recognition, maybe, of a kindred spirit, of someone else playing a role to stay alive. "What's your name?" he'd asked quietly. "Your real name." "Amanda. Amanda Hayes." "Amanda." He'd repeated it like he was testing how it felt. "It means eternal. It does." She tilted her head. "But nothing's really eternal, is it?" A ghost of a smile had touched his lips, the first real expression she'd seen from him. "No, I suppose nothing is." He'd moved toward the door, then paused. "The library is open to you, anytime. Don't hide in your room, Amanda Hayes. This house is lonely enough as it is." Then he'd left, and Amanda had sunk back into the chair, her hands trembling, her carefully constructed mission suddenly feeling a lot more complicated. Because she'd heard it in his voice. The loneliness, the exhaustion, the prison of his own making. And the worst part was that she'd understood it, had felt it echo in her own hollow chest. Two people surrounded by luxury and power, both utterly alone. It was the most dangerous kind of connection. The kind that made you forget why you'd come. The kind that made you care. The kind that could get you killed. After that night, everything changed. Not obviously, not in ways that anyone else would notice, but in the small moments. The way Jihoon would glance at her when he thought no one was looking. The way he'd started taking his coffee in the kitchen in the mornings, making small talk about books or the weather. The way he'd defend her when Seo Yeon's cruelty became too sharp, and Seo Yeon noticed. Of course she noticed. Women like her were predators, and they could smell a threat a mile away. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Amanda learned just how dangerous Seo Yeon could be. She'd been changing the sheets in the master bedroom when she'd found it, A phone tucked under the mattress. Not Seo Yan's usual phone, a burner. Cheap, disposable, the kind you used when you didn't want to be tracked. Amanda's training kicked in. She'd pulled out her own phone, photographing the burner's contents in under 2 minutes. Text messages, dozens of them, all to the same number, all containing information about Jihoon's schedule, his business meetings, his security details. And interspersed with the intel were messages of a very different nature. I can't wait to feel your hands on me again. He suspects nothing. He's too cold to care what I do. After tomorrow's deal closes, we'll have enough to disappear, just like we planned. The contact name was just a letter. Amanda's blood had run cold. Seo Yan was having an affair, but worse than that, she was selling out her husband. The details she was sharing could get Jihoon killed. In the Mafia world, information was currency, and Seo Yan was spending it like water. She'd replaced the phone exactly where she'd found it, finished making the bed with shaking hands, and left the room. Her mind was racing. This wasn't her mission. This wasn't her problem. Jihoon was still a suspect in her father's murder, still a criminal, still someone she was supposed to be investigating, not protecting. But her hands were already moving, already texting the photos to her secure cloud, already planning how to trace that number. Because somewhere in the last month, Jihoon had stopped being just a target. And that was a problem she didn't know how to solve. That evening, dinner was tense. Seo Yan had invited guests, important guests. Elder Kim and his wife, representatives from one of the allied families, the kind of dinner where appearances mattered, where the illusion of marital bliss had to be maintained. Amanda served the courses silently, playing her role perfectly. The invisible help. She watched Seo Yan play the devoted wife, touching Jihoon's hand, laughing at Elder Kim's jokes, every gesture a performance. And she watched Jihoon endure it, his face a mask of polite interest, his body language screaming discomfort every time Seo Yan touched him. "Your wife is radiant as always," Elder Kim said, raising his glass. "You're a lucky man, Jihoon." "Indeed," Jihoon replied, his voice flat. "Very lucky." Seo Yan's smile sharpened. "My husband is too modest. He's the one who built this empire. I'm just fortunate enough to stand beside him." "Liar," Amanda thought as she poured more wine. "You're planning to destroy him." After the guests left, after Seo Yan had retreated to her room, Amanda was cleaning up the dining room when Jihoon appeared. He'd loosened his tie, his face exhausted, his eyes haunted. "You must think we're pathetic," he said quietly, startling her. "This farce of a marriage." Amanda paused, a wine glass in her hand. "It's not my place to think anything, Mr. Kang." "Jihoon." He moved closer and she could smell his cologne, cedar, and something darker. "When it's just us, call me Jihoon." Her pulse quickened. "That wouldn't be appropriate?" "Nothing about this is appropriate, Amanda." He was close now. Too close. Close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. "I've been married for 3 years. 3 years to a woman who looks at me like I'm a business transaction. And in 3 years, no one has looked at me the way you do." "How do I look at you?" Her voice came out barely a whisper. "Like I'm human." His hand came up, hovering near her face but not touching, like he was afraid she'd break. "Like I'm not just the monster everyone else sees." "Maybe you're not," she breathed. The air between them crackled with electricity. His eyes dropped to her lips. Her breath caught. This was wrong on every level. He was married. He was her employer. He was potentially her father's killer. He was everything she should run from. But she didn't move. His phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He jerked back, pulling it from his pocket, his expression shuddering closed. "I have to take this." He turned away, answering in rapid Korean. "Business. Always business." Amanda released a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Her hands were shaking as she gathered the last of the dishes. That had been too close, too dangerous. She needed to remember why she was here, needed to focus on the mission, needed to stop imagining what it would feel like if he'd actually touched her. But that night, alone in her small room, she'd pulled up the photos from Seo Yeon's phone and started tracing that number. Not for the mission, not for justice, but because the thought of something happening to Jihoon made her chest physically ache, and that was when she knew she was in trouble. The number had led her to Minho. Park Minho, Jihoon's right-hand man, his most trusted advisor, his childhood friend. The man who sat in every important meeting, who knew every secret, who had access to everything. The ultimate betrayal. Amanda had spent days confirming it, tailing Minho on her days off, watching him meet Seo Yeon at a discreet hotel in Itaewon. She'd photographed them together, had recorded audio of their plans. They were going to wait until after Jihoon closed his biggest deal, a merger with a Japanese syndicate worth billions. Then they'd steal the information, sell it to a rival family, and disappear with enough money to live like royalty anywhere in the world. And if Jihoon got killed in the fallout, well, that was just convenient. The coldness of it had stunned her, not the betrayal itself. She'd grown up in this world. She knew that loyalty was a fairy tale and trust was a weakness. But the casual way they discussed his potential, murder like it was just another business detail to sort out, had made her sick. She'd sat in her car outside that hotel, staring at the evidence on her phone, and faced a truth she'd been avoiding for weeks. She cared about Kang Jihoon. Maybe more than cared, and she had a choice to make. Continue her mission, stay invisible, let events unfold, and see if the chaos revealed anything about her father. Or break cover, warn him, save him. There was no version of this where she could do both. That night she'd returned to the penthouse to find Jihoon in his office, working late as always. She'd stood outside the door for 10 minutes, her hand raised to knock, her heart hammering, her mind screaming at her to walk away. This wasn't her fight. He wasn't her responsibility. For all she knew, he really had been involved in her father's death. Saving him could mean letting a killer go free. But then she'd remembered the way he'd looked at her in the library. Like she was a person, not a servant. Like she mattered. No one had looked at her like that since her father died. She'd knocked. "Come in." He'd glanced up from his laptop, surprise flickering across his face when he saw her. "Amanda, it's late. You should be resting. I need to tell you something." Her voice had been steadier than she'd felt. "About your wife." His expression had shuddered immediately. "I don't discuss my marriage with the staff. She's having an affair with Minho." The silence that followed had been absolute. Jihoon had gone completely still, his face unreadable. When he finally spoke, his voice was dangerously quiet. "That's a serious accusation. I have proof." She'd pulled out her phone, her hands surprisingly steady, and showed him everything. The messages, the photos, the recordings. All of it. She'd watched his face as he'd processed the evidence. Watched the micro-expressions of shock, pain, fury, and finally resignation. When he'd looked up at her, his eyes had been empty again. That same hollowness she'd seen the first morning in the kitchen. "How long have you known?" he'd asked. 2 weeks. "Why tell me now?" "Because I care about you. Because the thought of you dying makes me want to burn the world down. Because somewhere along the way you stopped being a suspect and started being someone I can't imagine living without." "Because it's the right thing to do," she'd said instead. He'd stood, moving to the window, his back to her. His shoulders had been rigid, his hands clenched at his sides. "My marriage was arranged, a merger between her family and mine. I never expected love, but I expected loyalty." His laugh had been bitter. "And Minho, I've known him since we were children. He's been by my side for 15 years. "I'm sorry," Amanda had whispered. "Don't be." He'd turned to face her, and the raw pain in his eyes had stolen her breath. You're the only honest person in my life, Amanda Hayes. The only one who's given me truth instead of pretty lies. He'd moved closer and she'd felt the pull of him like gravity. Who are you, really? Because you're not just a maid who happens to speak 5 languages and knows how to conduct surveillance. Her heart had stopped. She'd prepared for this moment, had a cover story ready. But looking into his eyes, all her carefully constructed lies had crumbled. I'm someone looking for answers about my father's murder. The trail led to you. She'd expected anger. Expected him to call security, to have her thrown out or worse. Instead, he'd smiled, a real smile, sad and understanding. And did you find your answers? I found that you're not what I expected. She'd met his gaze steadily. I don't think you killed him. The timeline doesn't match. You were in Japan when he died. I was. He'd studied her face like he was memorizing it. Are you going to leave now? Now that you know I'm not your enemy? She should. Should walk out of this house and never look back. Should return to Atlanta and find another lead, another suspect. Should stop this before it became something she couldn't control. I don't know, she'd admitted. Stay. The word had been raw, vulnerable. Please, just stay. And God help her, she had. The next week had been a strange kind of limbo. Jihoon had said nothing about confronting Seo-yeon or Minho. He'd continued business as usual, playing his part perfectly. But he'd asked Amanda to keep watching, to document everything. Building a case, he'd said, making sure he had leverage when the time came. But in the private moments, when it was just the two of them, the walls had come down. Late-night conversations in the library had become routine. He'd told her about growing up in this life, about his father who'd ruled with an iron fist, about the burden of expectations that had crushed any chance of a normal life. She told him about her father, about the complicated love she'd had for a man who'd been both her hero and a criminal, about the grief that had driven her across the world seeking answers she might never find. They'd orbited each other like binary stars, drawn together by forces they couldn't name, held apart by realities they couldn't ignore. And Seo-yeon had watched it all with calculating eyes. The breaking point had come on Jihoon's birthday. A big celebration, Seo-yeon had insisted, important for appearances. All the family heads would be there, all the allies, everyone who mattered in Seoul's underworld. Amanda had helped prepare for days, transforming the penthouse into something out of a magazine. Crystal and candlelight, imported flowers, champagne that cost more per bottle than most people made in a month. She'd served drinks and appetizers, invisible as always, watching the performance. Seo-yeon played the devoted wife flawlessly, hanging on Ji-hoon's arm, laughing at his jokes, the picture of marital bliss. Minho had been there too, toasting his best friend, his betrayal hidden behind a smile. Amanda's stomach had churned watching them. These beautiful, terrible people in their expensive clothes, all hiding knives behind their backs. She'd been refilling champagne glasses when she'd seen it. Seo-yeon in the kitchen, alone for just a moment, pulling a small vial from her clutch. She'd poured it into a specific glass of whiskey, the one she'd prepared for Jihoon's birthday toast. The liquid had dissolved instantly, invisible. Amanda's training had identified it immediately. Not poison, something subtler, a sedative probably, enough to knock him out, make him vulnerable. Her mind had raced. This was it. This was the move. They'd incapacitate him during the party when everyone could see he was drunk, celebrating too hard. Then later, when the guests left, Minho would finish it. Make it look like a suicide or an accident. The unstable Mafia boss, depressed in his loveless marriage, one tragic end. Seo-yeon had carried the glass out with a smile. Amanda had followed, her heart pounding. She'd watched Seo-yeon approach Jihoon. Watched her press the glass into his hand with a kiss on his cheek. Happy birthday, my dear husband. Jihoon had looked at the glass, then at Amanda across the room. Their eyes had met. She'd shaken her head just slightly. a tiny movement no one else would notice. He'd raised the glass to his lips. Amanda had moved without thinking, crossing the room quickly, her tray of champagne glasses wobbling deliberately. She'd stumbled, perfectly calculated, and the tray had tilted. Champagne had splashed across Jihoon's suit, the whiskey glass knocked from his hand, shattering on the marble floor. The room had gone silent. "I'm so sorry," Amanda had gasped, dropping to her knees, her head bowed. "I'm so clumsy. Please forgive me, Mr. Kang." Seo-yeon's face had contorted with rage. "You stupid girl." She'd grabbed Amanda's arm, her nails digging in. "Do you have any idea how much that suit costs?" "I'm sorry, Mrs. Kang, The slap had cracked across her face like a whip. Amanda's head had snapped to the side, her cheek burning, her eyes watering. The room had been utterly silent. Then Jihoon's hand had caught Seo-yeon's wrist. His grip had been gentle but immovable, his voice colder than Amanda had ever heard it. "Touch her again, and alliance be damned, I will destroy your entire family." The shock on every face had been identical. The great Kang Jihoon defending a maid in front of everyone. "Jihoon, what are you—" Seo-yeon had started. "Get out!" His voice had been quiet but absolute. "All of you, the party's over." The guests had filtered out in stunned silence, casting glances between Jihoon, Seo-yeon, and Amanda still kneeling on the floor. Minho had lingered, his expression dark, but one look from Jihoon had sent him away too. When the door had closed behind the last guest, Jihoon had helped Amanda to her feet, his hand gentle on her arm. "Are you all right?" She'd nodded, not trusting her voice. He'd turned to Seo-yeon, and the temperature in the room had dropped 20 degrees. "I know about Minho." Seo-yeon's face had gone pale, then flushed. But she'd recovered quickly, her chin lifting. "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't insult both of us." He'd pulled out his phone, showing her the evidence. All of it. "I know about the affair, I know about the plan, I know about everything." Amanda had watched emotions flicker across Seo-yeon's face. Shock, fear, calculation, and finally cold defiance. "So what? This marriage was dead before it started. You want a divorce? Fine. Let's get divorced." "Agreed." Seo-yeon had blinked, clearly not expecting that. "Fine. But I'm taking half of everything. My family's lawyers will—" "You'll take what I give you and be grateful I don't bury you for treason." Jihoon's voice had been ice. "You sold out family business to a rival. That's a death sentence in our world, and you know it." Fear had flashed in Seo-yeon's eyes then. Real fear. But she'd masked it quickly with venom. "You think you can threaten me? My family will go to war over this. With what I have on you? Try it." He'd stepped closer. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign the divorce papers. You're going to take the settlement I offer, and you're going to disappear quietly. In exchange, I won't share the evidence of your betrayal with the other families." Seo-yeon had glanced between Jihoon and Amanda, and something ugly had twisted in her expression. "This is about her, isn't it? The maid." She'd laughed, sharp and cruel. "You're throwing away our alliance, risking a war between families for a piece of—" "Finish that sentence and I'll forget every rule I've ever lived by," Jihoon had interrupted, his voice deadly quiet. But Seo-yeon had been beyond caring, beyond rational thought. Amanda had seen it in her eyes the moment pride and rage overtook self-preservation. "Fine. You want her? You can have her, but she'll be dead by morning. My family doesn't forgive insults, and you've just insulted us in front of everyone who matters." The threat had hung in the air like a knife. And that was when everything had fallen apart. Jihoon's mask had cracked completely. "Please." The word had broken from him like a prayer. "Please, Seo-yeon, just give me one night to get her somewhere safe. Then you can have whatever you want, the money, the properties, everything." "You're begging?" Seo-yeon's eyes had widened with malicious delight. "The great Kang Jihoon is begging for the help?" "Yes." He dropped to his knees. actually dropped to his knees in front of his wife, his pride shattered on the marble floor. "Just one night, please. Let me get her to safety, then we'll negotiate whatever terms you want." Amanda had stood frozen in the doorway, watching this powerful man reduce himself to nothing, and her heart had shattered. He was sacrificing everything, his reputation, his pride, his position, for her. Seo Yan had smiled, cold and victorious. "You have until sunrise. After that, my family comes for both of you. And Ji-hoon, I'm going to enjoy watching you lose everything you care about." She'd swept from the room, leaving Ji-hoon kneeling on the floor, his shoulders shaking. Amanda had stood in the shadows for 3 heartbeats, 4, 5, everything in her screaming to run, to hide, to protect herself the way she'd learned to do since she was a child. But she was done hiding. She'd stepped into the light. "You shouldn't have done that." Ji-hoon's head had snapped up, seeing her for the first time. Shame and fear had warred across his face. "Amanda, you need to pack. I have a safe house in Busan. I can get you—" "You should have done your research, Mrs. Kang." Amanda hadn't been talking to Ji-hoon. She'd been looking at the hallway where Seo Yan had stopped, turning back with a sneer. "Excuse me?" Amanda had pulled out her phone, her hands steady, her voice stronger than it had ever been. "My name is Amanda Hayes. My father was Marcus Hayes. You might remember him. He ran the port of Atlanta for 20 years before someone murdered him 6 months ago." Seo Yan's face had gone white. "I came to Seoul looking for his killer. The evidence pointed to several families, including the Kangs, but mostly it pointed to yours." Amanda had advanced, and for the first time Seo Yan had backed up. "Your family brokered the deal that got my father killed. I have emails, recordings, financial transfers, everything." "You're lying," Seo Yan had whispered. "I spent 3 months in this house gathering evidence while you treated me like I was invisible." Amanda had smiled, and it had been sharp as broken glass. "Funny thing about invisible people. We see everything, hear everything, and we remember." She'd pulled up files on her phone, photographs of documents from Ji-hoon's office, recordings of conversations. But more than that, evidence from Seo Yan's own computer, her own files, emails she thought were encrypted, all of it pointing to a conspiracy between the SAO, family, and a Japanese syndicate to eliminate Marcus Hayes and take over his territory. "I've been undercover this whole time," Amanda had said quietly. "FBI? Interpol? No. Something worse. Just a daughter who loved her father and wanted justice. And you invited me into your home. Gave me access to everything because you thought I was just a stupid black girl who didn't matter." Ji-hoon had stood slowly, staring at Amanda like he'd never seen her before. You've been investigating this whole time?" "Yes." She'd met his eyes, letting him see the truth. "I suspected you at first. But you're not a killer, Ji-hoon. Just a man trapped in a world he didn't choose. Your wife's family, though? They're exactly what I've been looking for." "This is insane," Seo Yan had said, but her voice had been shaking. "You can't prove any of this." "I already have." Amanda had forwarded files even as they stood there. "I just sent everything to all 5 family heads, and to the Seoul Metropolitan Police, and to the FBI's International Crimes Division. By morning, everyone will know what your family did." The color had drained from Seo Yan's face completely. "You've destroyed us. You destroyed yourself when you killed my father." Amanda's voice had been cold. "This is just justice. But here's what I'm offering. You sign the divorce papers. You testify against your family's involvement. You disappear. And maybe, just maybe, you get to live. Because if you come after Ji-hoon or me or anyone else in this house, I will burn your entire bloodline to ash. And unlike you, when I make a threat, I keep it." Seo Yan had looked between them, trapped, terrified, and finally broken. "The papers. Where are they?" Ji-hoon had produced them from his office, his movements mechanical, still processing everything. Seo Yan had signed with shaking hands, her perfect mask finally cracked beyond repair. Then she'd run, grabbing her coat and purse, fleeing into the night like the coward she was. The door had slammed shut. Silence had fallen over the penthouse like snow. Amanda and Jihoon had stood in the wreckage of the evening, surrounded by shattered glass and broken illusions, and looked at each other across the distance that suddenly felt like miles. "You lied to me," he'd said finally. "Yes. About everything?" "Not everything." She'd stepped closer. "Not about understanding loneliness, not about the books, not about—" She'd trailed off. "Not about what?" His voice had been raw. "Not about the way I look at you." The air between them had crackled with electricity. Jihoon had closed the distance in 3 strides, his hand coming up to cup her face where Seo Yan had slapped her. "You're not a maid. I'm still a criminal. This is still impossible." "Everything about us has been impossible from the start," she'd whispered. "You came here to investigate me, to possibly destroy me. I know. You've been lying for 3 months. I know. I should throw you out, should never want to see you again. I know." She'd leaned into his touch despite herself. "So why aren't you?" "Because somewhere in the last 3 months you became the only real thing in my life." His thumb had brushed her cheekbone. "Because when I thought you were in danger, I would have given up everything to save you. Because when you stood in that doorway and revealed who you really are, I wasn't angry, I was in awe. Jihoon, tell me it wasn't all fake." His forehead had dropped to hers. "Tell me something between us was real." "All of it," she'd breathed. "The mission was real, the investigation was real, but this? Us? This was never supposed to happen. I fought it every single day, and I lost. Because you got under my skin, into my head, and I can't—" Her voice had cracked. "I can't imagine walking away from you, even though I should, even though this is insane." "Then don't." His hands had framed her face. "Stay, not as a maid, not as an investigator, just as Amanda. Stay and let's figure out this impossible thing together. Your world will never accept me. Then we'll build a new world. Your enemies will use me against you. My enemies already use everything against me. At least with you, I'll have someone worth fighting for." "This is crazy," she'd whispered, even as her hands came up to grip his shirt. "I've lived my whole life doing the reasonable thing, the strategic thing, and it's made me empty." He'd pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. "For once, I want to do the crazy thing, the impossible thing. I want you, Amanda Hayes, every complicated, dangerous, brilliant part of you." "Just one night?" she'd asked, echoing his earlier words, but with a different meaning now. "No." His smile had been small but real. "Every night, if you'll have me. This is a terrible idea." "The worst," he'd agreed. "We'll probably destroy each other. Probably. Your family will lose their minds. Without question." She'd laughed despite everything, and it had felt like breaking open. "Then I guess we're doing this." "Yeah?" Hope had flickered in his eyes, vulnerable and young. "Yeah?" She'd pulled him down to her. "But I'm not a damsel who needs saving, Kang Jihoon. I'm a partner, an equal. We figure this out together or not at all." "Partners," he'd agreed. "Equals." And then he'd kissed her. It hadn't been soft or gentle. It had been desperate, hungry, 3 months of tension finally breaking like a dam. His hands in her hair, her fingers digging into his shoulders, both of them trying to get closer. To confirm this was real, that they weren't alone anymore. When they'd finally broken apart, both breathing hard, Amanda had laughed again. "So what now?" "I've blown my cover, you're getting divorced, and we've basically declared war on one of the most powerful families in Korea. Now we finish what you started." Jihoon's eyes had gone hard, calculating. The Mafia boss returning. "You wanted justice for your father, let's get it. Together. You do that? Help me go after the people who killed him? They betrayed their alliance with my family. They tried to kill me. They threatened you. His smile had been sharp as a blade. I have plenty of reasons to want them destroyed. Yours are just more personal. She'd studied his face, seeing both the man who'd begged on his knees and the ruthless boss who commanded an empire, both parts of him, both real. This is really happening. We're really doing this. Having second thoughts? No. She'd kissed him again, softer this time. Just making sure I'm not dreaming. If you are, I'm having the same dream. He'd pulled her closer. Fair warning, though, my world is brutal. The people in it are worse. And now that they've seen me defend you, you're going to have a target on your back. Good thing I know how to shoot then. He'd blinked. Do you really? My father was a crime lord, Ji-hoon. I've known how to handle a gun since I was 12. She'd grinned at his expression. Surprised? Constantly. I think you're going to keep surprising me for a very long time. Is that a promise or a threat? Both. He'd kissed her forehead. Definitely both. They'd spent the rest of the night planning. Amanda had shared all her evidence, and Ji-hoon had added his own intelligence. Together, they'd built a case against the CO family that was airtight. By morning, they had a strategy. By noon, they'd set it in motion. The fallout had been spectacular. 3 family heads had turned on the COs within a week. The FBI had opened an investigation, assets had been frozen, people had been arrested, and Seo Yan had disappeared into witness protection, her testimony the final nail in her own family's coffin. Through it all, Amanda and Ji-hoon had stood together, partners, equals. The maid who wasn't a maid and the Mafia boss who'd learned to feel again. The other families had been scandalized, of course. A black woman at Kang Ji-hoon's side? Unheard of, unacceptable. But Ji-hoon had faced them all down with Amanda beside him, and he'd made it clear. Anyone who disrespected her answered to him. And no one wanted to answer to the man who'd just taken down one of the 5 great families. Respect in their world was earned in blood and fear. Amanda had proven she could spill both. 2 months after that terrible birthday party, Amanda had stood in the penthouse library, the same room where she'd first really talked to Ji-hoon and looked out over Seoul. The city glittered in the darkness, full of secrets and sins and stories. Ji-hoon had wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. Regrets? About which part? Going undercover? Falling for you? Staying in Seoul instead of going home? Any of it. She turned in his arms, meeting his eyes. Not one. You? Just that I didn't meet you sooner. In a different world. A normal one. Normal is overrated. She'd kissed him softly. Besides, would you really want me if I was normal? If I was easy? No, he'd admitted with a smile. I really wouldn't. Then stop wishing for different and appreciate what we have. Which is? Something real, something earned, something worth fighting for. She'd pulled back. We're never going to be a normal couple, Ji-hoon. Your world won't let us, my past won't let us, but maybe we can be something better, something true. Something eternal? He'd referenced her name. Maybe. She'd grinned. But you're going to have to work for it. I'm not an easy woman to keep. Good, he'd said, pulling her closer. I don't want easy, I want you. And outside, Seoul had hummed with life and danger, with secrets and sins, with all the complications that would continue to test them. But inside that penthouse, in that moment, 2 impossible people had found something that shouldn't exist but did anyway. Love. Real, complicated, dangerous, beautiful love. The kind worth begging for. The kind worth fighting for. The kind that might just be eternal after all. If this story made your heart race, don't leave without subscribing to this channel. Hit that like button if you believe in love that breaks all the rules. And drop a comment telling me what you would do if you fell for someone absolutely forbidden. Would you fight for them like Amanda did? Or would you walk away? Let me know because your girl is reading every single comment. New stories drop every week, and trust me, they only get more intense from here. Until next time, remember that the most dangerous thing isn't falling in love. It's pretending you haven't already fallen.